A4LE, school tours, a pyramid, and a Brazilian? What do all these have in common? Let's stick around. Hi, I'm Matt Brennan, and welcome to What the RFI, the podcast all about CA from the lens of an architect and project coordinator's perspective. Today, we are live from A4LE. We're in the interior chapter of the beautiful Kelowna, Okanagan, BC. And again, I share the stage with Gustavo. Say hi.
Hey.
And tell about yourself. Who are you? What firm are you with?
I'm Gustavo Matoso. I am from Brazil. I have over 11 years of experience in Brazil. And since I've moved to Canada, I started working at Arcos Consulting, which is a small company. And I was doing mainly childcare facilities. And after that, I was hired by Airedale, which was a game change in my life. And there, I got the pleasure to be invited to be an associate. And today,
Congrats.
with Graham Coleman, we are running the studio of education. So we do schools and childcares there.
Very cool. And yeah, and you, from making that was a big move. You know, it was a risk, right? You didn't know when you came over.
I think that my whole life is a big move. It's a big change.
That's true.
Starting in Brazil and like I tried to have my own company there.
Yeah.
Things didn't go so well. And then so many things happened, so many changes in life, change in career. And the decision of moving abroad, I think was the biggest step that I ever had.
Yeah.
Just because, like, honestly, the differences between the industries are huge. And without knowing exactly what was expecting me here and accepting the first job, like with a low salary, with just a risk, I think that everything was a risk. And at the time that I accepted Airedale was a second risk. Because, like, it's just a second employment.
Mm-hmm.
And thanks God, I found great people.
Yeah.
Great team, and like I found really supported by them with all the questions I had about the industry, all the questions I had about the whole process.
And are they totally different, like in terms of like construction methods and everything? Like I've got some really good friends from South Africa, and like that was the learning curve for them. It was the type of constructions that they do back home to here. Like, how is it? Is it similar, or what do you find?
I think that in terms of construction, yes, there is a big difference. Mainly because in Brazil we do concrete and brick work mostly. We do have drywall, but it's not something that is, I don't know, like the basis for houses, for instance. It's all about brick and concrete. And arriving here and knowing that it's all about wood frame mostly, that is a big change. And of course, the temperature, all the weather requirements, making sure that you have a building that is airtight, the envelope, all the details, layers after layers on the envelope that has to be in the correct order. Yeah. Like all of that was a big learning curve for me. Of course, the concept of a building didn't change. The concept of a design didn't change. But the main difference, and that actually goes exactly in the direction of this podcast, is the management, the administration of a construction is a huge difference.
Big difference. And we're going to get into that in detail in a second. But yeah, I definitely want to, like, this would be an event, be, you know, a live from A4LE. And I guess kind of the big things was, you know, any favorite moments, anything that you enjoyed from, you know, today's speakings, or...
Wow, favorite moments.
You know, or anything that you were like, hey, that's a eureka moment. I'm going to take that back or something.
I don't know if I can say like about a specific moment, but I was thrilled to be involved with so many childcare designs and making and seeing them ready. Yeah. And with children in and just using and playing around. That was like, it's a big change. I've never had like experienced building a school or a childcare in Brazil. That was the first time that I was doing it, was here. So that was a big change in my career. And looking at that now, seeing that ready, that was really great. Being involved with the whole design. But like, I think that above all, as a project manager, not only as an architect, the way the projects are managed here, that makes the sense to me. Like having control over the information, having control over the changes, having control of everything that is happening during construction, making sure, like, in summary, if I can say, imagine that here we know that the construction manager talk to you at the same level of knowledge and experience and organization. They are engineers. They are people that know what they are doing. They manage from start to finish with really control over cost, documents, and sharing that they are like matching or trying as much as they can the drawings is impressive. Where else in Brazil, you can lose track on that really easily.
And just go, And you can still lose track here, like with the, lots of discussions about, tonight about how the different games are. And I was talking to, some good friends and we joked, but it made sense. We said, when you start a job, right, when you design it and before it goes out of tender, put a random piece of steel somewhere and make it look like it's legit, but just as kind of out of place. And what we were getting at, it was part of this whole game process. Moment it goes in, the first change order that you issue, the proposed change is that you delete that random beam. It wasn't doing anything. And then you get a unit rate of the beam. And then the next moment when it's being erected for steel and like, oh, there was a mistake, we got to add so much steel, you can just be like, that was what you gave me that's the unit price that you provided me going forward.
I know right away.
And you can play the games back. So rather than always getting it from the contractor side, and again, you never go in with that intention. You are a team right from the get-go. Yes. But you do get the ones that like to fish for an extra, and let's just inundate you with RFIs and all those fun challenges that we have.
You're gonna find everywhere like different people, different type of companies, and of course, you can have a really good company that you're working with right away, and that's perfect. But sometimes it's just not as perfect as you wish.
Yeah. And on that note too, kind of being here in Kelowna, one of the last jobs I did before I left my last firm, Station 1 Architects, and then joined Part 3, is we did 6 repeat daycares all throughout Kelowna. So it basically was the same drawings, but just 6 different site locations. So yes, there might be, the site conditions, that's the only alternate, but at the end of the day, it's the same drawing package gone out to 6 different contractors.
Oh, 6 different contractors.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. So it was tendered 6 different times because originally it was supposed to be tendered 1. But what was very interesting, and we came up in our conversation earlier, is you think it is literally the same drawing package, and yet some would get like, one of them I think had maybe 15 RFIs, like very minimal for the year of construction, and then some had like 120. Wow. It was the same documentation, same details, no difference. And yet what a difference. And same thing with change orders too. Some would pick up on little stupid stuff and make it a hassle and headache. But at the end of the day, what a mixed bag. And that shows just the lens of a perspective.
And I am sure that the cost of the construction were different as well, even though they were the same design.
Exact same. There's not like I said, it was the same drawings, just the only thing in fairness was the site. Oh. And so, excusing that from the equation, what a mixed bag of, information, but it's all from different perspectives and the contractor looking at it. Sometimes it was legit but the moment sometimes they would issue and be like, oh, you got to make a change. And if it was a legit mistake, we'd issue the change on the other jobs immediately. So the cost would be less because they were billed in different sequence, right? So you had daycare 1 and then daycare, when daycare 1 was being finished, daycare 6 was just being started. So any mistakes that happened on daycare 1 or 2, we caught them in 5 and 6.
That's amazing to say that because like one of the construction that I wanted to talk about to you is one experience we are having now is that we have 3 sites, 3 schools.
Okay.
Similar design.
Yes.
But it's the same contractors. So we have the same thing. So every time that I get an RFI for one, it's the same RFI that comes from the other. So we have literally 3 times documentation.
Right.
For the project.
And rightfully so, there are 3 contracts.
It's the same 3 contracts, but the same contractor.
Yeah, so that's fine. So so they are contractually 3 different sides. So they're all going to have different change orders or, progress claims, and regardless. But yes, it is one contractor. Is there any way that you guys can kind of save your time and review one shop drawing package for the whole thing, or you got to do it one?
We have to do 3 times regardless. And one of the reasons is that even though we have the same contractor on site doing the construction administration, sometimes we have 3 different trades.
Yeah. Okay. And that's where the
3 different
shop
trades,
drawings,
different submittals. You have different people signing off on the submittals. And aside from that, even like they are really similar designs, but they are not specifically equal.
Yeah.
They have some differences.
Yeah.
At the end, like we review one. When we are reviewing the second one, we will get the same comments and bring that here, just making sure that they are matching the same, like we see the same problems. We put the same comments, but at the same time, we are spending 3 times more than what we expected.
And kind of hearing all the scenarios, like you said, different subs. Well, okay, you have to do it. There's no way of getting around it. There's no trying to fast track it. Like, I guess what you could do in terms of fast tracking is if the contractor could issue, say the door shop drawings 1, 2, 3 at exactly the same moment, you could have, honestly buy 3 monitors and basically 1 monitor, 2 monitor, 3 monitor, have everything laid up there. And, you're just going through line by line of like those doors, for example, check.
And that's what I'm doing. Like we have one team managing the project. So we have the same people managing the things. And like, instead of giving you the shop, like the door shop drawing, and giving the door shop drawing to another person for the other site, we give all the door shop drawings to one person.
Yes, and it makes sense because, like, again, you're in that rhythm and everything, and you just, like I said, just do it at the same time, and then you're done. Speaking of like door shop drawings, and this is always good practice. Like this is what I find. I'm interested to hear. Do you review the door jamb thickness?
Oh yeah.
You do.
And not only do that we send that out to a door specialist to review that as well.
You are doing this, and I'm not talking the width. I'm talking the jamb.
Everything.
Okay.
I mean, we do verify the jamb, but we are not responsible for it.
Okay.
If you look at the contract,
the
general contractor has to do it.
Exactly. And what I would know, why I put this question out there is what I've done in the past is very bold, like straight up. We are not reviewing the door jambs. Contractor review on site, coordination between structural drawings, as-built, any changes.
Or maybe we actually reviewed that in this case because we are working with modular construction.
Okay.
And considering a volumetric modular construction, sometimes you end up with double walls.
Yeah, I'm very familiar. And I think...
So you have a special door thickness there.
Yes.
And then we have to capture that in the review. Otherwise, that becomes a big problem during construction. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So I've like for me, the door jambs, I've always basically put it back to the contractor, review it, because I don't know what they've done on site. Maybe they've changed, they've gone up a stud size or something or anything like that, or structurals come out and said, put an extra layer of, sheathing
5/8 to half an inch drywall.
Exactly. And then how would you know that, right? Unless you're knowing. That's why I always put that. I always say the jamb thickness is I put it back to the contractor. That's my kind of take. So, but again, if it's every practice has its own ways of doing it. So, but that was always one that was a caveat. I'm like, not going to do it because if they order the jamb thickness wrong, then we're hooped. But I think kind of that's a good segue into like kind of one of the talks that came today, and it was about modular design in school and CA, and the minister gave us basically an insight to modular coming. Thoughts? What did your takeaways from that session?
I have to say, I have mixed opinions in my head.
Okay,
to be honest, like
high summary. What did you get? Like before we get into that. So,
it's not a surprise to me. Like since we are listening to those news for a few years now.
Yeah.
Last year was a big change. It was most of the projects, most of the renovations or constructions were based on volumetric prefabrication.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just because the ministry said we are only funding for those type of projects, or not only funding, but that was the main focus on their funding processes. So the school district, when applying for funds to anything, would be easier for them to get funded on a volumetric prefabrication. So they ended up, most of the school district ended up doing modular additions to their schools.
So if I was a facility manager and I go, okay, our district's growing crazy, I need a new school, that's not in the card, so I can do an addition. And rather than getting a, stick frame addition, that's where the ministry is saying, we're going to give you a modular.
Yes.
So you're not going to get a fixed building. You're going to get, this is the only, if you want it, that's the option. Exactly. End of story. So
it's not only that, it's just the idea of having a fast track process to get funded for a fast track project.
Right. Okay. So now let's dive into your thoughts on that.
Like we see that the whole country is suffering with the big population and the growth population. Like population growth is just huge. And we are not keeping up with the number of schools and the number of classrooms for the kids.
That's right.
And then they realized that was the case. They started adding so many like portables on school grounds.
Yeah.
Okay, solves the problem for 1 year. But honestly, would you like a kid to be in that portable for 5 years?
I actually did when I was in high school. I did my portables, and it was dark. It was misty, musty, stank. It was
no
cold.
one likes it.
And of course, let's take this. You do get the biofuel effect from going from the school out in the rain and back into the portable. So there's some benefits.
And we are in BC, like in Canada. It rains a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Atmospheric rivers, as we had last week.
That's what you have. So in that case, knowing that the growth of population is just not stopping and you need more schools, what's the best way for making fast classrooms?
Yeah.
And in their idea, which I agree, like a volumetric construction allows you to do that. You can repeat design after design and do that. I'm not saying that I like the design.
Yeah.
But if you just look after numbers, you can get it. However, the problem that I find is, as an architect, I wish I could design something special for that school, for that site, for that community, and also for those kids that are using that space. And if I am using volumetric construction, I can't, because then I have to repeat again and again and again the same construction, the same modular, the same space, the same thing. I'm not saying that's the case. You can always find different designs and find solutions, but in a straightforward answer without thinking too much, that's what comes to mind. So I don't like it as an architect, but as a person and a taxpayer, it makes sense.
No, and it's a good point. Like I did modular for about 4 years, and it was interesting. I learned a lot, right? Because you wore multiple hats. Like you wore the architectural hat, you wore the structural hat, you wore the electrical hat, you wore the mechanical hat, because you drew everything. And two, it's not like there's no changes in the factory because it's a nightmare, right? Everything's pre-designed and coordinated, and then you go. So I guess the question is, with all these new schools, are they like, that's one thing with the modular firm. If you just say, I want a mod and it should be quicker. Yes, but by the way, I'm the mod firm and I've got 6 months of inventory that I've got to get, released. So you're going to be 6 months down the road. And at that point, it would have been the same timeline if you stick frame. But if they start right at the moment you say go, then it's definitely pump out, especially if you've got hundreds of these things, right? And that's what makes it. But I guess at the same time with the modular firms, they're not making these like off the shelf and then having them in the yard waiting for you to be like, I got a school, I'm going to drop on 2 units, boom. Like that's what they did on the trailers back in the day. But this is becoming, it's not a trailer, it's modular permanent design, right?
And that's when the challenge becomes a problem. Like that's when the challenge starts. Like you want to design something special, but using a volumetric construction. So you start thinking about process and even the design of the building in a way that allows that to happen. Allowing a factory to produce or to have that process of having several units ready in a really like a time frame that makes sense to the project. And at the same time, our case, and I think that most of the architects are choosing that route, we decided to have the envelope finished on site, so that once you install the cladding, you don't have that feeling of
it's
a
seamless.
boxy building.
Agreed. And I agree. Yeah.
And so the results, the aesthetic will be like a regular project, a regular building, but you are only using the methodology of a volumetric prefabrication to make it faster.
Right. Yeah.
That makes sense to me. That's like there is no discussion about that. This is what we need. This is something we can do. However, not all the factories are ready for that. The industry doesn't seem to be ready for taking the expected fund from the BC, from the ministry, because it seems that the ministry says I have that amount of money. That's how many classrooms you can build. But if you look at the industry, if you look at the market, there isn't that many manufacturer that can take the job. No. And even if there wasn't, like how many of them can do it properly with the quality that you were expecting?
No, 100%. And at one point there was a lot of modular firms, because like modular makes really sense for like these camp housings, right? And like when I was at Brickco, these camps were crazy. Like these were a 2,000, 5,000 man camp, right? Because they were building a dam or whatever the case is, and they would drop these up in the oil fields and all totally sporadic. So, and the neat thing about the modular housing in that respect is, again, they were built for dorms, but these, oil gas company A versus B, you're going to design your camp one way, and I'm going, well, I need workers, so I'm going to make it even better. I'm going to put a theater, and I'm going to do this. I'm going to bring up so the finishes got nicer, and it became this game. And those cases that made so much sense for modular, and especially with some of these more remote projects going up north or something like that. Haida Gwaii was one of Bella Bella and other stuff like these made sense for these really remotes, because in the mod, you get it done in the factory, everything's done, you drop it on site, and then it's minimal connections just to get it up and running. And either you go, with an actual permanent foundation, or you just kind of you put it on your stilts, and that kind of there's other options that you can go with it. But it's interesting that the ministry is pushing for modular in town, where you do have workers, that you do have access to materials and everything. It's not up in the middle of nowhere.
Correct. And there is a big change in the way you understand the modular. Yeah. It's like the module itself, because you are telling me that it's something that the factory designs, put them together, clad it, covers it, ship, install on site, and it's always the same, usually. Because then you are talking about lots of houses that are exactly the same.
That's right.
But now we are talking about something that is permanent, and we want to have a special design for that specific classroom, but for that specific school, and the standards change. And then is the factory okay with changing their way of building stuff? Because they will have to change. So it's now a custom building. It's not that like pre-designed element that they are like they know how to do from start to finish. Now they have to learn again.
Right. And keep in mind, for anyone that is doing modular, thinking that they're going to push the envelope and go crazy. No, there is regulations on width for transportation. So the maximum width is 14'6", and that includes any projection. So if you've got like vents ducked out or something like that, they take it on the scale, they laser it, and the moment you're over that 14'6", I think it's like 14'8", but you give that 2 inches of spare. And the height was something similar. I think it was 12'6". You could maybe go a little bit higher, maybe 14 feet was the.
I think that you can do it like 13 or 14 feet high as well.
High as the max.
Yeah, it's kind of 14 by 14. Roughly.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good. And then the length, like I found 60 feet was that was kind of pushing it. 65, you started getting bounced like the back of the bus.
But that's then it's not a regulation. It's about like how well you can manage the shipping.
Exactly. And what trailers. And then there was some custom trailers you get it dropped and maybe but the reality is like, you can go, and especially if you're going up to these remote things, you would want to check your whole Google Earth, road trip, going up there and going, I can't get up there because there's one bridge that's at this lower height, And now you've got to barge it around, or maybe you're going down to Montana from Vancouver, BC, and going all the way around. There's ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And if you do the double wides, it's doable, but you're doing it like.
But you're not doing NBC double wide.
You can't do it, exactly, because the regulations on the road, and they do it a lot in Calgary.
Yeah, in Calgary they are allowed to do crazy things.
Yeah, like,
it's double width, double height. They do whatever. Like they can.
Yeah.
They don't have any curves. Like there is no it's just straight highways.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's what makes sense. Is they're not going through the Rockies, they're not going through tunnels, they're just going on an open plain and going for a drive.
And the experience we had exactly was that. Our manufacturer is in Alberta, in Calgary.
That's right.
So for them to drive up to Surrey.
Yeah, they've got to look at the routes and again time. And that's why, again, going to the 1414 rules, you fit all the bills and then it's not as a big deal. But now you're restraining yourself to design because you have these junction walls, as you noted earlier with the door jambs, right? So you have to design that. And if you're trying to do a washroom or an open space, you do get limited with that. You're going to have posts because, again, you can't totally have a whole wall missing because these modules rack. And so those are the other challenges I found.
So many challenges. But then honestly, that's a lovely part.
Yes.
Like finding the solutions for those kinds of things. I love it.
Yes.
Like discussing with people, telling them like, what do you think? And bringing them to the discussion and like creating that relationship of trust.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
100%.
And the problem is when you get to construction and that trust goes away.
So how does CA, there's a perfect segue into, so how does CA work? Because now, correct me if I'm wrong, you're working with two contractors. You're working with the general contractor on site, and now you've got a modular firm as a contractor.
Yeah, so specifically this project, we had that special case where the client decided to hire the construction manager, so the CM, with a straight contract, and they also hired the fabricator with a different contract. So instead of putting the fabricator under the CM, they are working in parallel.
Yeah.
And you have the consultants reviewing both works.
Yeah.
So we in summary, we have 6 contracts to manage.
Right. So you're getting
There's 3, actually not 6. The fabricator had 1 contract. So we have 3 contracts from the CM, and 1 contract from the manufacturer. Yeah. So even though we have 3 projects, we have 3 contracts for administration.
That's right. But the RFIs are still managed through 1, 2,
we have
3.
4.
Or so 4, yeah.
Because you have the fabricator.
Yes. Yes, this is fun following along. Yeah, so I can't even imagine being in your shoes with all of this, but you guys got it. You're making it happen, and you're working through it. So you're trying to find the new way of doing it.
It's crazy. It drives us crazy. It takes us some nights. Yeah. But at the end, we love it.
Exactly.
We love what we do.
100%. No, I agree. And that's kind of like what A4LE is all about, because it's all about school design and creating unique learning environments. And this was a challenge that was kind of, that's been brought to it. But again, the reality is it's just another opportunity to, as another laborer, basically, another contractor, bring another solution to the industry. Because the reality is, housing crisis we've already talked about, but this gives you another set of helping hands to basically solve a problem. Is it going to solve a problem? No, but again, the more hands on deck,
the more problems we find.
Hopefully we can get the buildings that need to be in, because it's just everywhere. And I really do predict 2025 is going to be the year. I'm hearing it from I was down in Houston last week, hearing the other architects and talking with them, and it sounds like a lot of things brewing, and that this is whatever this little mini recession was, it's gone, and things are looking amazing. Good for everybody.
I believe that you are totally right. I believe that we are getting to a really high construction period now. Which poses some challenges in my opinion. Like one of the problems that I faced with this project specifically is that the fabricator that is in Alberta, they told us that they knew about BC regulation, and we expected that they also knew that. However, it's not what we saw. Like in reality, what we saw was that they didn't know much about the BC building code. Therefore, we had to guide them through how to execute many parts of the modular unit, for instance.
Yeah.
Like when we have a general contractor in BC that is working on the site, we know that we can tell them, we can discuss about the building code, because most of the time they know the building code as much as we know.
Yeah.
And then it's kind of a discussion that is easy to address, and you can point out problems in terms of envelope, for instance, much easier, because they know that we have so many more restrictions in BC than in Alberta for that.
Right.
So the part 5 of the building code is way more restrictive in BC than in Alberta.
And too, with modular, like again, being when I was at the firm there, like every area was different. So like snow loads were all different, right? Because based on that, and now with
rain screen, windows,
and then also like climate zone A, B, C, etc. Right? Like Kelowna, I think this is climate zone 3, or is it 4? 4. That's right. So again, that just changes higher R values, and basically just got thicker walls and more packed insulation, and that's again outboard insulation. There's lots of options to get the ratings, and it's wood too, so it's not steel.
It's a wood frame.
It's
a wood frame.
So that's definitely a
but
bonus.
Beyond like discussing about building code and regulation like that, was a challenging for us, and I'm not sure if this is going to be all across all manufacturers, but we found some, I don't know if it's a lack of knowledge or was just the way that we managed the project that was so quick that like we kind of went through it, and like we didn't realize, they didn't realize how much was needed in terms of effort to put on shop drawings, even the process of RFIs, all the submittals, change orders, site instructions, all of that. It seemed that we knew what to do, but they didn't know exactly how the process worked. And we had to kind of teach them, or we had so many discussions about it. I wouldn't say that we taught them, but we had so many discussions about that, because they said, oh, we know how to do, but in reality, it was not the way we were expecting.
Right.
So
fair enough. So in closing up the modular conversation, like, what do you expect for the future? What do you see? Is it going to change over the next 10, 20 years? Like, we're going to do this just for a few years until government changes and they say, oh, that's it, no, go back to that? Or what do you think? What's big, again, crystal ball, what do you think? Where do you put the chips on the table?
So I don't think that it's something that is temporary. I don't think it's temporary. I think that's something that I want to implement, and that will be kept as part of the like the funding process, but they are not getting rid of the rest of the other options. Like they are still chasing regular stick frame construction. They are still allowing for those type of funding, and they would focus on modular construction. And I'm not saying volumetric only, but they are also doing penalized. They are allowing for penalized construction as a method for additions. So you have a school, they need more classrooms. How do you do that really fast? How do you make a project that will turn in 1 year from design to construction?
And you're kind of somewhat doing that simultaneously, in a sense. Like, you're getting them prepped up, but you want to make sure, like I said, modular, when you say go, there's no changes after that word go is done, because like I said, it's modular, it's in the factory. You can't just move a toilet from here to there, because it doesn't work like that, because it's all been framed accordingly. Everything's to the T.
However, as an architect, we are still obliged to go to the factory and review everything.
And thanks for bringing that up, because you're right. You've got to do that, because your liability is on it, because you're signing and sealing on this building.
Yeah, and even though they are talking about the production, we still have to verify all framing, all roofing. All the like air barrier, vapor barrier, all the applications, all of that.
Yeah, and before they seal it, you got to see it.
Yes, and that's what the industry is not ready yet, and I believe that maybe in 10 to 20 years from now, like everyone will understand this process, and we will understand the requirements, and even the regulation might change. I don't know. Like, I'm not saying that that has to change, but currently we are obliged to go to the factory to verify all of that as if that was being constructed on site.
Yeah.
Which means that in a construction like ours, we are talking about like 3 schools, like 16 classrooms on one, 12 classrooms on another, and 8 classrooms on the last one. Like, it's a lot of product. Like, it's a lot of modules for you to review.
Yes. Oh, 100%. You're going to be essentially just hiring someone from your firm to live at the factory.
Yeah.
Give this guy an office. He has a laptop. He's going to be there, and he's just let him know he's going to kind of do some of the other work during the day. But being available to go there and check.
Ideally, if they do one good product at the first row, like a mock-up,
right,
and it's perfect.
But you still want to check the others on. I know it's a mock-up, but you still got to check it.
That's what I'm saying. Like, would you
quality
trust
control
100%? I don't know if I would trust. But and that's where I find that the regulation, there is room for changes to the regulation.
Yeah.
If you have a system, if you have a factory that has a really good QA, QC process, and they are CSA certified, which gives them the responsibility of controlling quality, they should be responsible for making sure that the product that they are delivering follows the shop drawings, for instance.
Yeah, 100%.
And if there is any difference, any discrepancy, shouldn't be the architect's responsibility because it's a product.
That's part 2.
Just like when you buy an iPad, you don't go there to verify what's going on inside.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's right. You did the prototype, you did the quality control. And then maybe, you do the random checks just to make sure, pull it from the shelf. Yeah, no, this is good. This is working.
That's what the client's expecting. It's just something that comes from the shelf.
Yeah. But again, from an obligation of signing, sealing.
How do you do it?
And that's the question. Can you do that? And maybe that's where, again, your local architectural authority has to come in, like AIBC in this case, and look at this and give you that leeway that you're not going to get called up on court or get green sheet, right? Or disciplinary notice is what it is now, right?
Exactly.
And then say you're not doing your job. Well, no, we reviewed the product, we did the shop drawing, everything was good, and they had to do that 10 times.
Yep.
Well, no, you've got to go review it 10 times. So that is kind of maybe that is the part where it's going to change.
Exactly. And I don't know if I am being mistaken myself or just leading the conversation in a wrong way, but when you purchase a window, especially I'm an architect. As an architect, I can't, by the way, I'm not an architect, registered architect yet. I'll be an architect shortly.
There you go.
It's in the process.
Good.
But as an architect, you don't check
every window.
Like, no. You check the window installation.
Yeah, but you do the mock-up one, like you said.
You do the mock-up.
Make sure it's all good. That way
you do a few window tests, water tests.
Yeah.
But you don't do all of them.
Yeah.
So you expect that if they executed one properly, or a few, that most of them would be okay, right? Like both. I know that we're going to have a building envelope consultant review and at least the air barrier and all of that treatment. However, you don't check the frame of the window, the mullions of the windows, or the glass of the windows, or how that silicone within that. You don't ask them to open it. Yeah. So it's a product that comes installed. So wouldn't you expect the same out of the modulars?
Yeah, that was a good point. I think that's kind of a good thing to kind of, stir on and for people to comment as well. And it'd be interesting to see how that works. And from, again, through the states, and if they're in the same boat, and that's something I'm going to really kind of, I'm really enjoying this conversation because it definitely brings a whole new light is at what point do you have to sign, seal off everything? Or like you said, is it a product? And that's the whole debate about it. And it makes sense. And if there's an issue, who's responsible? Yeah. So
I hope we'll keep that conversation.
Yeah.
And I hope that the ministry will keep that conversation. And I hope that the industry will change and evolve altogether.
Exactly.
That's That's what we need.
Learning.
That's what we need.
Yeah, that will be the conversation piece tonight when we go to the bar and have a good talk. And you're gonna be like, look what we talked about. Look, we figured out an issue, a problem, a solution, all through talking for 30 minutes about this.
Just give some alcohol to us.
Exactly. So, and speaking of that, we, and then kind of wrap up the day. What we did is we went to Summerhill Winery. A little shout out to them. Very beautiful place. I've seen the wine. I've had the wine before, but no idea when we get there. There's this giant pyramid, not the full size pyramid of Pyramid Giza, but oh my goodness! And what a treat! We got to go in it. And I don't know about you, but
feel that energy.
There was this energy. And
put that hands up.
That's right.
Don't touch them.
That's right.
Just feel it. So that was nice.
So kind of going into this, and I'm assuming the owner named Steve and everything, and just down to earth guys saying, going into this open mind, no negative energy, and you will moment. And I was going up the stairs and I thought, okay, let's see what this is like. And we go up the stairs and we're in that space, and you're right, it just hits you, and it felt light, and it was weird. Like he said, it wasn't gonna be a spiritual kind of thing, and that's all it was. It was a different feeling. And then you're right. We put the hands out. And as we raised to people, there was something, it was really crazy. And but anyways, we'll take it for what it is.
Stepping up that stairs.
Yeah.
And just looking at that stone wall.
Yes.
When we got to that space, and honestly, I was one of the first ones. I think that was the fourth one to get there. And I got in, and I went straight in, just looking at this whole space. When I started looking at people arriving with us, it was so interesting that everyone stopped in a point that they could observe. Everyone looked at the same place. Yeah. Everyone looked up to the peak. Everyone was just
yeah.
And that was amazing.
It was very cool. And then we got some pretty cool school tours going to be tomorrow. Again, lots of 21st learning and seeing. And again, it'd be interesting to get everyone's takes on it. One of them I was really involved from schematic right to the very end. So I'm excited to see. I always say these are thumbprints, and that's the best part of the job. It truly is. So,
which, by the way, I'm really happy that the people that are joining us in this event are not only architects. We have architects, we have engineers, have mechanical engineers, have fabricators, by the way.
Yeah, that's right. It's all over. And they were saying it's one of the most diverse groups in the chapter for A4LE, which is very cool. And I think that's, and it's good because, again, everyone has their expertise, everyone has the challenges, and how we come together and just be better. And I think that's ultimate, these groups, and CSI, same thing. It's just how can we be better and keep it and just get excited. So where can we find you? Where can our guests and our audience and everybody kind of go? Where can they find you? What's your plug?
You can find me at Arideo, of course, from Monday to Friday.
Good point. There we go. Careful what you wish for. Maybe you might get someone.
You can also find me as Gustavo Matoso, GUSTAVO So that's my full name, Gustavo Matoso, at LinkedIn.
Okay.
That's it.
Very cool. Well, thanks for joining me. It's an absolute pleasure.
But we can for sure give my contact information or more information in the description of the podcast.
Certainly. Yeah, we could load it up, and there we go, and do that. And no, I'm excited for tomorrow. We'll kind of wrap up this, another event, another conference, and then we'll see we'll come back and do it another year and see where everyone's kind of done and what we've taken away. And we'll talk modular, and we'll talk CA, we'll talk about AI and CA that we didn't get into tonight, but that's another discussion. And I think it's pretty cool. So basically, till next time, guys, architects, keep designing.
Of course, always.
And contractors.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. And contractors keep building, making those plans reality.
Let's do it.
See you in the next one, guys.